everybody, and welcome to this latest entry in my video series all about how I'm using virtual reality to fight my fear of flying. In this video, this is the third of a three-part series of experiments that I'm doing where I'm not writing out a script beforehand. I'm not recording a narration separately. I'm actually just talking in real time as I sit in the different phases of a flight where I practice some of the techniques that I use to fight my fear of flying. So the first two videos, the first video dealt with the takeoff portion, the second video dealt with the climb and cruise portion of the flight, and you guessed it, the third video is going to deal with the landing portion. So in the landing portion, for me personally, it's actually among the least stressful moments of the flight. I know that it's sort of coming to an end, and that sort of relaxes me a little bit. There's a lot to do. There's the anticipation of arriving at my destination. There's if I'm lucky and I've got a window seat and the weather is good and it's daytime, blah blah blah, I can look out the window and sort of distract myself by seeing some of the sights down below. So for me, most of the time, the landing portion's actually not quite as rough as the other portions, but I recognize that that doesn't always happen, and I still use a lot of my techniques, especially if I'm going through a bumpy area, if the weather's not too good, if there's something unexpected like a go-around or having to wait longer than normal, having to circle, anything like that. I try to remind myself of all the knowledge I've accrued about aviation, about how safe flying is. I use my techniques, different things I have in my toolbox to stay calm and go through the motions of everything to sort of let myself relax, let myself calm down, let myself realize that the flight is almost over, and then I have control of myself. So different things that can happen as we start our descent here. First off, you'll notice those slats, those pieces of material on the wing that have come up. Those are actually called the speed brakes or spoilers. And what that does is it changes the shape of the wing pretty significantly. And planes, they use that to sort of slow down. There's some speed restrictions as we get below a certain altitude that all pilots have to comply with, sort of speed limit in the sky. And as we're descending, sort of in aviation, as planes descend, they pick up speed, and so we need a way to sort of control that speed. So you'll notice that come up. The plane's not braking. There's nothing wrong with the wing. That's totally normal. It's a factor of it. So those are coming up, and eventually, a little bit later, the flaps will also start to go down. That's a separate portion. You can see the speed brakes there going up. The flaps are the ones that will start to angle down like that. You also probably hear the engine cycling up and down in power. The autopilot, most likely is sort of trying to find the right power setting to keep us at a steady speed and a steady rate of descent to match our flight plan. So as speed brakes are applied, maybe we might slow down more than we anticipated, and the power might go up. Some of the cycling that you'll hear is probably due to my not configuring the plane correctly for the plane, to be totally honest. So in a real plane, there may be a little bit less of that, but that's also a normal sound. So on a real flight, the flight attendants will probably be coming through to clean up everything, collecting different trash, and making sure that everybody is seated and buckled up, and basically seeing to the sort of last minute needs that anybody might have as far as the passengers go, making sure that the plane is safe and everything's stowed away and ready for landing. The pilot will probably have been in communication throughout the flight, but he might come on again and talk about just give some information about the arrival airport, maybe what the weather's like, talk about anything, gate changes or assignments, things like that. Maybe just a little bit of chit chat as well, anything like that. Maybe if he sees anything outside of the window that maybe scenic for people to look at, might mention that as well. So in the meantime, I'll probably still be watching something on my screen, or at least listening to it. and dividing my time looking outside, maybe watching the screen a little bit, and look outside a little bit more. Right now, I'm sort of in and out of the clouds. It's actually something that I like. One of the enjoyable moments of flying for me. So I try to appreciate that and remind myself of the things that are nice, because part of dealing with fear of flying is also sort of taking the fangs out of that fear and letting yourself relax enough that you can actually enjoy it a little bit. I know it sounds crazy, and it doesn't always work for me either, but I do my best. So right now, we'll be lowering. Maybe in real life we've had a few bumps or something like that, and so something like that unexpected happens. I'll start to breathe deeply again. I'll do my inhale through the nose. I'll hold it, and then I'll exhale through the mouth. And I'll do that as many times as I need to calm down. Or I also use the Breathe app on my Apple Watch, but I prefer the just sort of good old-fashioned non-technological solution without having to resort to the watch. Look around. I'll feel centered. I'll think about where I am. I'll remind myself that flying is inherently safe. I'll remind myself of my different mantras. And I'll think about what's normal in these last phases of flight. And for airliners, one thing that can be a concern sometimes, or for me was a concern, was fuel levels. Do we have enough fuel to make it if we have to move or something changes? Yes, we definitely have enough fuel. They plan for extra fuel in case we have to go around, in case we can't land right when we want to land, in case we have to even go somewhere else, just in case there's a weather problem or something like that. So in the cockpit, they'll be talking to air traffic control, and they'll be following instructions from air traffic control and doing the various things that they need to do, checklists and preparations and stuff like that for landing. Everything is well thought out and tried and true procedures that pilots who are absolute experts follow every single flight. And that's why there are millions of flights a year that there are no issues with. There's tens of thousands of flights every day, thousands of flights every day, and they're all safe and everything's fine. So as we're descending here, I'll probably hear some more wind rushing noises, some more noises from the flaps. If the flaps have started to get applied a little bit, looks like they're still up at this phase. Right now, we can still see the speed brakes applying there. You may be able to see some sights down below. Right now, you can't really notice too much of anything there. Partly the simulator. I think in real life with this kind of cloud cover, we could probably see pretty clearly down there, but that's okay. And again, the flight attendants would be at a certain stage in there, coming around and helping us, and making sure everybody's seated. At a certain point, when they're finished up and we're close enough to landing, they themselves sit down and strap themselves in as well. That's also totally normal. You'll probably be hearing pings. That's something that I should have mentioned on some of the other videos as well, that the different pings for the flight attendant notifications, different chimes, the seatbelt notifications, all those things are totally normal as well. And as we descend, you can start to hear a little bit more of the wind here in the background, and again, that's just totally normal. Getting a little bit closer here in the clouds. About to go through the clouds a little bit. Atlanta has actually, the times I've been to Atlanta, it's always been raining. So this is a little bit better actually in terms of the weather. A little bit of a simulator weather pop-in, I think, right there. Looks probably something that's just simulator related. So I'll be sitting here. I'll be continuing to maybe watch my show, more movie there, and dividing my time, looking outside, watching my movie, interacting with people maybe, if I'm feeling up to it. Another thing that I do when I'm on flights, and I'm actually probably going to make a totally separate video about this, is at the beginning of a flight, I'll, not for any sort of special privilege or anything like that, but just to let them know when I first board a plane, I'll try to single out one of the flight attendants and just let them know kindly that, hey, I've got a little bit of flight anxiety. I'm managing it, there's no problem or anything like that, but I just wanted to let you know. I try to do that every flight, and they're always very receptive. Their whole job is to be there for us. And whether it's, just for me, it's just the peace of mind that knows that, the professional will sort of know that they may be a little bit anxious, and so if they see some guy doing a bunch of deep breathing, they'll know what's going on. Or, it could be something that, if we hit a patch of turbulence, I'll come over for a quick reassurance, if they have time for that. So, just a nice practice. I don't do the, I've heard that some airlines, some flights offer sort of priority seating or priority status if you're a nervous flyer. I don't do any of that stuff. One of the things I don't want to sort of, I don't want to stigmatize myself. I don't want to give it, my anxiety more power than it already has. The idea is to sort of exert my power over it. And so one of the ways that I do that is to inform flight attendants, but not to be treated special, just so that they're aware. I think it's important to make that distinction between the two of those things, because it's a practical conversation I'll have with a flight attendant, but not anything that makes me feel like I'm making a bigger production of it than I need to. And I feel that distinction is fairly important to not inflate the difficulties or the feeling of anxiety. A little bit of simulator issues again. I'm having a little bit more today than I do normally, unfortunately, but if you can just bear with it. We're passing through the clouds here, and we should be fairly close to landing. You can see that the spoilers are still up. Speed brakes are still up there. And maybe some wing flexing. Totally normal, just with the... Okay, so that, you hear that sound right there? That's the flaps starting to be applied. There's also sounds that, or they actually could have been the landing gear going down, actually. I'm not quite sure which one that was. I do believe that was the flaps in that situation there. I don't see them going down as much. Speed brakes are going down. But, it's just common to hear some different noises as we're descending through this. Whether it's noises from the engines making, whether it's different, mechanical noises of flaps going down, the wheels coming down, the landing gear coming down. All those things are normal. I can hear the engine spooling up a little bit more just to keep that speed right at where we want it to be safe for our descent. That's also a normal thing, even though it seems a little counterintuitive. We're trying to slow down, we're trying to descend, but sometimes a little bit more power is necessary in certain phases of the descent. And probably at this stage, the flight attendants will have made their final pass, final check, walked through and made sure everybody was strapped in, all the seat backs are upright, all the tray tables are away. The pilot probably will have come back on to give the final talk, maybe just to let the flight attendants know it's time to be seated. The fasten seatbelt sign will be on. And I feel like we should be fairly close to the landing here. Unfortunately, the weather seems to have popped out again, so I can't quite see how close we are to that, but it's feeling like, just based on timing, we're fairly close to being down here. So And again, just using my techniques to relax, deep breathing. Maybe at this point I'll go back to playing my my game on my phone, different type of math game or something like that to keep my mind distracted. Maybe watching TV will be enough. If I happen to be sitting next to somebody, maybe I'll talk to them. On my last flight, I actually just videotaped the entire approach and landing, so that was a pretty good distraction for me as well. Well, we seem to be maybe a little bit, my timing maybe is a little bit off. Maybe we're still a little bit higher than I thought we were. But you can hear some more flaps getting applied out there. We're getting closer. You can see the flaps going down there if you can pay attention close. And with the flap application, there's a little weather pop in there. Again, just because of the simulator. But with the application of the flaps, a lot of times you also feel a little bit of change in your seat, like light or heavy in your seat. That's because the flaps sort of change the shape of the wing, which in turn shapes sort of our pitch or our speed. So it's not uncommon to feel a little bit of difference there. But that's totally normal. So we're in a little bit of clouds, we're in some weather. We should be popping through this fairly soon. When we pop through that, I anticipate we'll be fairly close to landing here. At this stage in the flight, they've in communication with air traffic control, of course, at every second throughout the whole flight. But especially now, they're getting direct, what's called vectors, just directions to head in, and speeds to go at, and altitudes to be at, in order to get sort of exactly where everybody needs to be. And a little bit more of the pop in. I think at this stage, probably a little bit more flaps than you would normally hear. I think in a real plane, I think that's probably, you can just chalk that to my inexperience piloting the plane earlier. How I normally set it up is I actually pilot the plane in a full flight. I pilot the whole flight, and then I set up a replay, and I set it in the replay. So right now, this is a flight that I did earlier this afternoon, and right now I'm sitting here doing the replay. And so I think probably what you hear in terms of the flaps was just a little bit of a mistake on my part, but it's helpful to sort of illustrate the idea that you'll be hearing things, different mechanical noises and stuff like that in the descent. Do a little bit more breathing right now. So now I think we are actually, I think I jumped the gun before, but I think we are actually close to the end now. Actually close to the end of this flight. We're just doing a final turnaround, and once we complete this 180, this 180, once we complete that, we'll be on course for landing, and it looks like that maybe, if you can see off in the distance, actually, that maybe looks like that's just a reflection. I thought that was the airport there. But yeah, so at this point, the flight attendants would be sitting down. So maybe a little bit off on the timing beforehand as far as like when people are going around for final checks and stowing, making sure luggage was stowed and people were seated correctly and seatbelted correctly. But at this point, I think that will all be done, and people will be pretty much ready to land. Just looking at some of the scenery down there, it looks like there's some lakes, some farms, some housing developments. I'll be watching my video, distracting myself a little bit, but also feeling presence, making sure I'm staying in the same area. And, at this point in the flight, there'll be some more that'll be turning, the plane will bank, one wheel will go down, or one wing will go down, the other will go up. It's a normal part of the flight. It doesn't mean that the plane is about to veer off and go into the ground or anything like that. It's just how the plane turns, and it's a totally normal thing, especially close to landing. As we get lower and lower, have to make some more turns as part of the flight plan to get exactly lined up with the runway and follow the rules of the plane of the air. And another turn here, totally normally getting back on track, or not even. That implies that we weren't on track before. This is just all part of the flight plan and all programmed into the autopilot, which is closely monitored by the pilots. Or it could be that they're flying it manually at this stage as we're a little bit closer to landing. But in any case, it's clearly with the instructions of air traffic control and within parameters that have been set up well in advance, or reacting to any last-minute changes that might happen, which is also a normal part of flight as well. Okay, so now you'll hear that. I think that sound right there is the landing gear coming down and the flaps coming down simultaneously. So making up for that error that I had made previously with the flaps, this is when the flaps actually should have been applied. You can see that they've gone down there quite a bit. And our pitch is changing a little bit with that flap application. We're lower to the ground, and we're probably lined up fairly closely to the runway. We may still be maybe 5-10 miles out. Wait, about 10 miles out, maybe a little bit more. But we're fairly close now. So at this point, there may be some more manual adjustments, to the plane. There may be a little bit more rocking if the pilot is flying manually. At this stage, there may be just a little bit more fine tuning that feels a little bit different than when the plane is just totally on autopilot, but also still totally normal. Under the control of the pilot is, controlling the plane and knows exactly what he or she is doing. At this stage in the flight, I'll probably be looking outside and trying to pick out houses or structures or small cars or things like that. So, kind of a fun portion of the flight here. Probably another notch of flaps is just applied there as we get even closer to our landing here in Georgia. You can see here the cloud layer above us and a fairly clear afternoon. As we start to descend a little bit more, again, you might notice some flex in the wings. We're not seeing too much today, but I would be doing my deep breathing. I might be, playing my math game on my phone. I may be using my mantras in my head. I might be reminding myself of, all the normal parts of aviation, thinking about how safe flying is. And looking forward to my destination. Another thing is thinking about the things I'm going to be doing at the destination. If I've finally arrived at my destination, I think about what I'm going to be doing that day or that evening. Looking forward to whatever it may be, whether it's tourism, whether it's work, whether it's sleep, any of those things, just thinking about that. If this is a leg in a flight, I think about, what I'm going to be doing in the airport. And if it's something as mundane as, I'm going to go use the restroom. Just thinking about after the flight, I think is important and helpful for the just sense of relaxation, sense of being in control. So as we descend, we're getting a little bit closer. You can see we're starting to get some being able to distinguish some features on the ground, some trees and things like that. I'd say we're getting fairly close here. Again, I think my timing overall of explaining when some of these things were going to happen is probably a little bit off, I think. There'd probably be a little bit less lag between when I said flight attendants were going to be coming by and the end of the plane, the end of the flight. Usually they try to space that out a little bit better than I do in my head, but overall you get the idea. Sort of at the end of the flight attendants come by and collect all the garbage and do all the things that they need to do. And starting to notice some more features coming in. I think this is probably well after you would notice that in real life, but in the simulator this is when it starts to become a little bit clearer, especially with the type of textures, as they call it, the terrain below that I've got loaded in. And it's a fairly smooth day for flying, so there's not too many adjustments for wind or turbulence or anything, but that could be something else that you notice at this stage. Right now we've got a fairly smooth entry into the airport, fairly direct entry, so there's not a lot of last-minute course deviations, but that could be a thing that happens as well. A little bit of turning, a little bit of banking. But right now we're pretty much very close to landing, so even unless there's a go around, which does happen for various reasons, we'd be pretty straight on. Starting to see some lights pop in, some roads. Continuing to do my deep breathing, continuing to think mantras in my head, flying being inherently safe. About air being cushioned, thinking about the things that I want to do when I get to my destination. Now, at a certain point, when we get close to the runway, I start to get worried because you can't see the runway in front of you. Obviously, you can't see what's actually in front of you. So when you're looking from this perspective, it looks like, wow, we're awful close. We're pretty close to the ground, to the land. I certainly hope that the runway's somewhere in front of us. That's good to keep sort of just in faith that we are going to the airport, to the runway, and this is a normal altitude to be at. And then eventually you start to see the airport sort of come in. Most of the time, depending on the airport, there's a little bit of structures and things like that before you actually hit the runway. So as you can see, that's popped in now, and we're just on course right now. And you'll feel the bump and the noise as we touch down. There we go. As we touch down, you'll feel a sharp deceleration. And you'll probably notice, if you're sitting close to the engine, you'll notice the engines change configuration. If you're sitting close to the wing, you'll see speed brakes come up again. No, the wing's not broken. That's totally normal. And you'll start to see everything slow down outside bit by bit as the plane decelerates. You'll probably hear some more noises as the flaps come back up. And then the plane will slowly start to taxi off the runway. And that's it. Thank you everybody for watching. Thanks for bearing with me in this latest experiment and doing things a little bit differently on this channel. Hopefully some of the things I said will be helpful. Apologies for any repetition or mistakes I may have made, but feel free to call me out on them in the comments or ask any questions or leave any criticism. If you like these videos, please definitely hit those like and subscribe buttons. It does go a long way and it's greatly appreciated if you like the videos, of course. And yeah, thanks for watching the video, and hopefully be back soon with another video all about how I'm using VR to fight my fear of flying.